so we don't lose them since we have 5.
Welcome for those of you that are joining us. My name is Brian, and with me is Joanna and Erica. We will be with you in just a moment or two. We'll let a couple other people come in, and we'll get started promptly at 1 o'clock or whatever time zone you're in.
While you wait, if you could please type in the chat where you're calling from and your role. We'll start right at the top of the hour. Welcome, Kelly from Ohio. New York. Hi, Jenna. Good morning. Well, good morning or good afternoon. Welcome to everyone. Thanks for being here. If you just joined us, we'll start promptly in another minute. If you could, while you're waiting, please type in the chat where you're calling from and your role. Good morning from San Diego. Hi, Andrea. From the Fleet Science Center, I've been there. I know the Fleet Science Center. All right. Well, it is the top of the hour. Should we get started, team, or do you want to wait another 30 seconds?
Let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, great. All right. Well, welcome everyone. What next? You're here for the FOSS project team. We are located, a lot of us are located at the Lawrence at University of California at Berkeley. Welcome again if you're just joining, and please go ahead and type in the chat where you're calling from. From our FOSS team, you can go back. From our FOSS team, our presenters today are Brian Campbell, Erica Beck Spencer, and myself. Erica is calling in from Portland, Maine, and Brian and I are calling in from the Bay Area, and it is a sunny day here today. Okay, next. So you're on, I think your microphones are mute. This session will be recorded, so we are asking you to turn your video off. And please, though, feel free. Erica will be working the chat, so please feel free to type any questions you have in the chat, and Erica will respond to them. And then, of course, when we have some conversation or discussion, turn your mic off so you can contribute. That would be great. Okay, next. So we hope to share with you today 3 instructional strategies to increase student engagement. We'll model a physical science lesson. We'll discuss contributors to success, especially during this school year, and learn about the new FOSS resources. Erica will, right now, she'll put in the chat the link to this FAQ document. Here you'll find lots of helpful links, especially helpful for this academic year to FOSS instruction. And I highly suggest that you you download it when you have a chance. It'll answer a lot of questions. So the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine came out with this 100-page document a couple of months ago regarding science and engineering during a crisis. You can download the PDF for free, so you can look it up. And there are 4 key principles that you see listed here. So, you know, the first one, all students need a rich and ongoing opportunities, prioritizing 3-dimensional learning experiences over the coverage of content. And then 2 really talks about how important it is to prioritize relationships and equity, especially with the most vulnerable students, and especially with social emotional learning. Prioritizing relationships through a lot of us are doing online, so is really important. And equitable outcomes require attention to think about student success, inclusion, engagement, motivation, and interest. And of course, families and communities are a critical asset, and adjusting to the changing learning environments takes time. It takes time for the students, it takes time for the teachers, it takes time for all of us to be working. This year has been very disruptive. So just know that that is definitely one of the key principles that came out of this document. Next. So FOSS has created many remote instruction resources to work with your FOSS modules. Students still, in all the new resources that you're going to learn about today, they still make predictions, ask questions, observe. So we still are staying true to that. And also teachers can still engage students with sense making and provide students the opportunity to collaborate. And we hope you'll see that today. So Brian's gonna take it away here and get right into the lesson.
Yes, so one of the things that we wanted to do today was to provide you with an experience as a learner, not so much to teach you content about motion and matter, but more so you can see how there are ways to take things that might be initially viewed as, you know, your students log in, okay, all right, you're gonna watch another video, and the engagement just drops off. Students aren't engaged because they're not being asked to kind of critically think about anything of merit to them. So we have to find ways, as Joanna said, to connect to these students, build these relationships in a way that works for you as a teacher and in the district with all of the constraints around times, resources, and those things that you have. So typically FOSS is a very active, hands-on, engaging program. And what we have found is that there are many districts, such as the district my daughters are in, where all of the instruction is remote, resources are not being distributed to students to do some things. So teachers are being asked to recreate lessons digitally, you know, by holding up materials or things like that, you know, and working on, you know, how do things move, such things. However, we found that throughout our program, there are things, particular lessons that we can do, that we can provide a resource for teachers that are in those districts where remote instruction is the main source of delivering science. It's not ideal. It's not what we want. It's, from our standpoint, we really want to have students with direct experiences, but here we are. So, you know, we want to move towards my daughter copying definitions off of a screen in her notebook to really getting kids to think critically about DCIs, SEPs, etc. So the lesson that you're going to see today involves a video, but there are going to be distinct points where we interject particular strategies that are really meant to build a sense of community and up that engagement. So we're going to watch a portion of this video, and I'll jump around as we need to in terms of this with the timing that we have. So I'm going to share this video with you. And we have, this is from a Motion and Matter module, which is a 3rd grade physical science, but we also have some other videos that are available. So you can see what are things that we can do with even video types of instruction.
We are going to be working with ramps and wheels in this part to look at the effects of balanced and unbalanced forces. Here are some large plastic discs that we will use like wheels on this ramp. What forces are pushing or pulling on the wheel? What are the effects of those forces?
So this in our particular program is a bit of a review. So as a teacher, I might pause the video here and I might ask some questions, have students respond and chat, or depending upon kind of the culture that I've set up, maybe unmute themselves and things. But what I'm doing as a teacher, I'm deciding certain parts to kind of interject. I don't want to send the video home cold without any instruction for students on how to use this. So there's a little bit of discussion that can happen around force, but we're going to continue on and focus a little bit more on motion.
Let's add an axle between 2 wheels and create a system. What effects did the forces have on this system? Think about patterns of motion. A pattern of motion might describe the direction an object goes, such as up or down.
So as you watch these different systems, what I would like for you to do is to really focus on what type of motion you're seeing these wheels do. You know, are they rolling down? How are they rolling? So I'm going to ask a couple of you to share as we get on the other side of watching.
Or how an object moves, such as rolling smoothly or wobbling. What do all these wheels do when they are in motion?
Okay, so I think what I want to do now is I want to have you share a couple of the words that you have used or you might use to describe the motion of those systems that you use. So I'm going to have you you can enter it in the chat if that's something you feel more comfortable with, or you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and share. Ooh, I heard the word, I see the word wobbly. I see gravity pulls them down the ramp, rolling. So this is a word that, roll is one that I want to start with. So roll, so we have this idea of roll. So I might pause and say, all right, so let's make those motions roll. What other objects might roll? So we can add this word to our word wall, roll. And then I heard another one, this idea of wobbly. You had wobbly. How is wobbly a little bit different than rolling? Not as steady, unstable. So these are words that we can start using. And so as we go through, what I'm doing is trying to really elicit from students, what are the words that they're using to describe what they see? Those informal vocabulary is really what I want to tap into. So we might see things like eventually, like it turns, it rolls smoothly, straight, those types of things that we can get to here. And actually, I want to put wobbly down here next to smooth. But somebody might say something like a word wiggly. You might prompt for, tell me a little bit more when you say wiggly, because I want to try to build those descriptions in the classroom. However, sometimes a teacher or a district might want to do something that's a little bit more involved with tech. So teachers have done things around the idea of word clouds, and similar type of interaction. What I'm trying to do is elicit the words that students are using. So the larger the words, the more they're being used by students. And then I can kind of start to use more words like, oh, wobble, smooth, those words that are being used less frequent, just try to work those into the instruction a little bit more. So quick, purposeful interaction to elevate that vocabulary. Life science, physical science, whatever the case may be. So we're going to jump back into the video. We're going to watch a little bit more on some patterns of motion with these systems. And this is one of the nice things about videos is that students can go back
What
and
patterns
rewatch it,
of motion did you observe?
and they can pause, or we can.
What differences did you notice? What questions do you have? The focus question for this part is, how can we change the motion of wheel and axle systems rolling down ramps?
So we can pause here, have students enter that into their notebook.
Let's observe different wheel and axle systems. Pause the video and record your observations in your notebook. You'll pause the video every time you see this icon. Here is a small wheel we can add to our systems. Here is a small wheel and a large wheel on opposite ends of the axle.
I might pause the video here if I'm looking at my wall of faces on my screen, and if interaction is not where I want it to be, I might pause and say, what sort of things are we noticing about this system? Does it always turn that way? Does it move this way all of the time? What are ways? So I'm probing questions as we go and really looking at that interaction.
Pause the video and record your observations in your notebook. Do this for each activity. Here is an axle in different wheel holes.
At this point, if you know your community of learners that you're working with, it might be something you pause. Take a look around where you are. What are things that might turn when they roll? What are things that might roll smoothly? What are things that might wobble? We're trying to make connections between what they're seeing and things that are in their life.
Here are two axles and a small wheel in the middle. Here is a big wheel in the middle with small wheels on both ends.
So I'm just going to pause here. This kind of continues with some other systems and different combinations. And we get to a point where we can start to ask some questions.
What did you observe about patterns of motion in our wheel and axle systems? What were the most interesting wheel systems? How did the design affect the pattern of motion?
So this last question is one that I want us to think about. We need to think about what is it that we saw in the motion, and we've got some of those words up here. But can we think about what is causing some of those types of motions? So what we're going to do is we're going to work on creating, as a group together, we're going to create a effect and cause chart. So it's not a cause and effect, because in this particular case, we see the effect. What we're trying to figure out is what caused that to happen. So here's one that we could start with, and you can either unmute yourself and share, or you can enter some of this information into the chat, and we can have Eric or Joanna maybe share some of these. But if we want the effect, if we notice effect is that the system rolls straight, what causes the system to roll straight? So if I'm doing this with a class, I might, and everyone has access to the video, I might pause and say, I want you to take, maybe 5 minutes, go back and rewatch parts of the video, see if you can find what type of system causes that to roll straight. So here, as adult learners, what are some things that that people could use? So what could we do to make a system that rolls straight? So, seeing same size wheels, balance. So, I might probe, balance the sides, seeing this. So cause, oops, sorry. And I actually need to jump out here and do this. And I will reshare this here just a second. So cause same size wheels. And I could continue on. What other observations did students make? They saw that maybe it turned to the left. So I can put different effects. And again, back to this idea around the DCI, we're looking at patterns of motions and causes and effect. So what made it turn to the left? What made it turn to the right? So a cause and effect type of thing. Relatively low tech. As a teacher, I'm eliciting things from students. Or if I wanted to do the ever dicey with students breakout rooms, there's something there that I can also do. When we go into breakout rooms with students, it's important that there's a tangible task that they come back with, because, well, if you've done it, you know why. And you need to set up all of the types of culture to make that happen. People have roles, etc. So you might create something, 8 groups, 4 students. Every group has a prompt. So instead of the effect and cause, we might ask each group a question. How do I make a system that will roll straight? How will I make a system that turns or wobbles, so on? So that's the question that they have to answer. I might set this up on a Google sheet that's got the question on the top. Group 1 fills their response in here. Group 2 goes here. Whatever your tech system is set up. But also I want to support them in terms of language. So I might provide a sentence starter or 2. Again, give them access to the word wall, etc. Provide at least one example. And then we always want to give them a time. So if you're going to be in the breakout room for 5 minutes, this is what you need to get done. We need to keep that quick. We need to keep that purposeful. But it's another way to get to the same idea of effect and cause. So we're looking again at what is making a system have a particular effect. So from there, we can jump back into the video, and we've got one more interaction here that will come that we can do. And
let's look at the patterns of motion of 2 different systems. What do you notice about the motion? What is causing the motion to be different? Let's come back to the focus question. How can we change the motion of wheel and axle systems rolling down ramps?
so as a teacher, I'm helping students kind of navigate this delivery mechanism. I might be doing this live with them instead of using a video, but these videos kind of serve as a model of what teachers could do just with their own Zoom room or similar. I can interact with the notebooks, have them do things at a group level and also individual levels.
Pick 2 systems. Draw pictures and describe the pattern of motion. How does the arrangement of the wheels and axles affect the way the system rolls? Here are the words we used in this part. You can pause.
So we can have students pause the video. So the last interaction we do with this, and this really kind of takes a lot of the information and really kicks it up a little bit. So this is a probably a little bit more of a focused around argumentation and that part rather than just sharing observations. In this particular one, this is what we might use as a low-tech option. So, I asked 3 students to think about this. This is a bottle of balsamic vinaigrette because it's 10:30 in the morning. So we've got this. If I were to roll this down a ramp, which way do you think it would go and why? That's what I asked these students. So I'm going to pause for a second. So if I rolled this down a ramp, which way do you think it would go? For students, what I'm trying to do is to get them to make connections to what they have already experienced to new contexts. So, and if you grew up in a hilly area like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, knowing which way the ball would roll would save you from a good 10-minute walk down the hill. So these types of things can impact even young students. So one student said, I think the bottle will roll straight because the fat part will touch the ramp. So a second student said, I agree, the top part won't touch the ramp and the fat part is all the same size. And then the third one is, I think the bottle will turn because the top and the bottom and the size of the ends are all that matter. So this is different than that, and that's the only thing that really matters is the different ends. So which of these students do you agree with and why? So you can take yourself off mute, think about this in the chat. Which of these? And you might say student 1, student 2, student 3, green text, red text, blue text. So this is something that we've actually done with students. Students tend to be more critical or thoughtful around ideas of others that maybe they don't know these students. The social interaction is a little different.
Brian, did you show us the bottle?
Yes. So
But we never saw it, I don't think.
okay. So yes, this is the bottle here.
No, we're not seeing it.
Oh, are you able
I'm
to see my
seeing
video?
it.
Okay. So
Oh,
yes,
I think she wants to make it full screen. Should we go full screen for Brian?
I can.
There we go. Now you're full screen.
Okay. So here we are. Bottle. So
Did you
let's go back to the slide so you can see, oops, sorry. So you can see that. So which student do you think you would agree with and why?
I agree with the first 2 students.
Okay. And so when we respond to ideas, we've got some starters over here that we can use. And I think Erica can actually place a link to, we call these talk posters, and we have them available for part of our program. And Erica's going to paste a link for that in there. But there's some sentence starters on here. So one of them might be like, why do you think that? Or what evidence do you have? So what's your thinking on why you agree with the first two students?
And Brian, if you could unshare or stop sharing so they can see the sentence frames a little better.
I'd like to. They're in there.
Okay, never
But I'd
mind.
like to keep the text up on the screen for right now. So why do you agree with them? And what connections can you make with that?
Well, I'm just thinking about when I've had bottles on kitchen counters and they tip over, the skinny part doesn't touch the counter.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that it's not necessarily the shape of the object, but it's more of what's touching the ramp or the surface that it's going to roll down.
Yeah, that's it.
Would somebody like to add on to that? Actually, will someone please add on to that? How is that similar to the wheel and axle systems that we saw previously?
The bottom of the bottle is one of the wheels, and the fat part before the neck might be the other one, and the small part's the sidecar.
Yeah, the sidecar. I like it. So if we had a ramp, it looks like this. We can turn and we can see what part of that ramp is, or what part of that bottle is touching the ramp, and which part isn't. So I can actually.
One person wrote the parts that touch are the same size.
So back to this cause and effect thing that we had previously. The idea of that if they're the same size, we might get something that rolls straight. So, and I might also end with something like, for next time, what I'd like for you to do is to look around your house and find something that will roll straight and bring that to share, and find something that will turn and bring that to share. So things like that to really kind of connect to their thinking, deepen it a little bit, to get them to think critically about that. It's a very different experience than watching my 14-year-old copy down definitions. And it does things to this level of engagement. All of a sudden, somebody values what I have to think and what I have to say. And that's important for students. More techie option, people have set up Padlets, similar type of thing. So, if I'm a teacher, I was talking to a teacher here in the district, they're teaching a hybrid approach where, they've got group A, group B, and remote learning group, and they've got to give instruction to all of them. So same strategy, maybe the same prompts, one's delivered more low tech, one delivered more high tech, but the engagement with the students and what they're thinking about can still be similar if the delivery mechanism changes. So a Padlet can be set up and students can be sent the link, and they, given sentence starters, I want you to reply to either one of these two students or another student in the classroom. So these types of things are ways that we can really up the level of engagement, but also from an instructional standpoint, we need to think about the timing on these. This is, if this is an hour lesson, I want it for 45 minutes, I want to think about how to break that up. So there's a good strategy towards the beginning, a good strategy towards the middle, and a good strategy towards the end. So those are some examples that we have in this particular one. This was done with a video. Similar types of things can be done if you have more direct experiences, or students can have more direct experiences. So if you're doing things where a teacher is rolling things down the ramp, is a much stronger connection because there's a human that they can interact with that's familiar and it's friendly and can respond and help them work out words. It's a very more supportive environment. And then even more so if you are working in person. So with that, I'm going to kind of jump out of the lesson and turn this over to Joanna, who is going to talk a little bit about what you saw in the lesson and how we can think about this from a teacher's perspective.
Yeah, so I want to invite you to please unmute yourselves or write in the chat. Thinking back about the 3 dimensions and this lesson, the core idea, the practices, the cross-cutting concepts, how might students be engaged with each of those, and how are they integrated and weaved in the lesson? I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Just type in the chat or please unmute yourself. I'd love to hear some other voices.
I'm going to say I'm really weak on these. I normally teach 3rd grade. I'm full remote, so it's been 8 months since I did any science with students. But I'm thinking about the practices and the idea that you look at the object, you think about its function, and then you discuss it and revise your thinking.
Thank you, Kathleen, for sharing. I like that. The revising your thinking, right? Like making an observation, having some input from a teacher, and then revision of your thinking. That's great, because we want students to be solving problems and being creative and using their mind. So that's great. I love that. Anyone else?
I like the real world connection where he used the bottle, something that kids would readily have at home and could actually test on their own before making, jumping in and saying, oh, it's going to do this or that. They might test it just to make sure, because they might have connected it to the wheel, the larger wheel with the smaller wheel, just in looking at the shape of the bottle, not thinking about what surface is touching the ramp. So I really like that connection to real life.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I think that will keep students engaged if you can give them, and you'll hear in a minute about some of the resources that we've created for these homeschool connections for students, and what do they have around their house that they can try. Even Brian used, I noticed, a binder, right? You can use a book, right? They could make a ramp fairly easy, a cereal box or cardboard that they have at home. So they could probably pretty easily make ramps and with things around their home and roll things. Great, thank you for sharing that. Someone else?
There are a bunch of thoughts in the chat.
Oh, great.
A lot of people were focused on how effective it was for pausing the video and asking questions. Good way to engage all 3 dimensions throughout the discussions. Force and motion are related, finding patterns. I appreciate how you integrated using evidence and then applying that to cause and effect. S's are using students are using a model and thinking about how the system worked with motion of different models. Analyzing data, the data is their observations, and another echo to finding things around the house to test.
Well, these are all great. Thank you so much for sharing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Real quick, one thing that a lot of our users have yet to discover is that we do have some chapters online that relate to cross-cutting concepts in science and engineering practices that are grade level specific, that have some of these strategies in there. Granted, they were more analog in nature, but a lot of these strategies around effect and cause, making predictions, concept cartoons, argumentation. So those are available on FOSS Web for users, and they are connected to grade level, and they are available in the state resources section. But there's a lot of people in this chat, or if you're more interested in that, you can ask questions at the end of the session as well. So Just wanted to
Great,
mention.
thanks for sharing, Brian. Yeah, Brian picked these three strategies: sharing observations from the video and pausing the video for conversation, analyzing the data using the effect and cause chart, and then the sense-making strategy using argumentation with the concept cartoon. Those are all outlined in our chapters. But it's really important that you start from where you're at. If you haven't been doing science for a long time, pick one strategy. Teachers are being asked to do more than ever, so it's very important to just start from where you're at and try one thing. We want to try to get away from students just copying definitions during their science time. So we need doable small successes. So next. Brian, if you could, yes. So if we could continue this conversation for longer, these might be other points that we might discuss. But we're going to move on to the next slide. So we, FOSS staff, have created a number of remote learning resources for teachers that I just kind of want to go over right now. So let's just start with the next slide. The FOSS teams developed flexible resources to support a variety of instructional models for the 2020-21 school year, to your module specific resources that have been organized into a navigation matrix. And these resources support the use of the investigation guide and FOSS materials in different types of learning environments. Next. So they can be found on the FOSS web. The navigation matrix looks something like this. It goes along again with module specific recommendations and suggestions for instruction during these times. Teachers can chart their unique pathway through the investigation guide depending on their needs or changes that arise. And we're continually updating these resources throughout the year. And of course, with so many teachers across the country, there's so many scenarios going on. So if you're in person, maybe you have recommended guidelines, or there's also, we have instruction on remote learning, synchronous and asynchronous. So just to kind of zoom in a little bit, maybe the next slide, maybe you're in the classroom, but you have some type of modified in-person learning. So we have guidelines for that. Or maybe you're teaching remotely synchronously. We have instruction for that. Or maybe you've been able to send home some materials to the students and you'd like to know what are those essential materials. So we've made a list for that. Or maybe you want to bring home as a teacher some material, so on your video you can show the students something. So we've kind of also made lists for that. And then we have lots of asynchronous resources. Next slide. So we have at-home resources for this module, motion and matter. Something the students might do after is that they might, using any kinds of outdoor activities, whether it's basketball or skateboards or something, that they might have outside playing any kinds of games, explore outdoor activities and identify the force and the patterns of motion. Before this, students were exploring pushes and pulls. So we have a lesson on what household tasks require force of pushing or the forces of pulling. And we even have a lesson on exploring balance with yoga poses. And then after this lesson, what are possible kinds of tops that they could make using recycled lids and straws? And we have a number of examples for students, ideas for students, and even a spinning art project. So we have all of these at-home resources for every single module so that students can do some of these things with what they have at home. So next slide. So Brian showed you a video, and we have these videos that you can be used in a number of synchronous or asynchronous ways, posted on FOSS Web. Next slide. And then we also have a student side where remote learning, the remote learning menus on FOSS Web, where students can access materials. So here you see reading, multimedia, other at-home activities, and new student video in English and in Spanish. So lots of resources for students. So we would love it if you would check out other FOSS resources during the conference at the FOSS NSTA page or the FOSS or Delta Marketplace area. We have a lot that we're offering throughout this conference, so please come see what else we have. And I want to thank everyone for attending today. We really appreciate your time. Thank you for so much you're doing for students, because we know how much you're taxed in this unprecedented year. Brian, do you want to say, or Erica, anything else?
I think I'd just like to echo, you know, as a parent, you know, of two daughters watching this unfold, teachers are being asked to do a lot, and I cannot pat anyone any harder on the back for jobs well done all around. It's truly remarkable how much educators are stepping up in this time, and so we will continue to work as hard as we can to support you in the work that you do with students. And we're here, you know, if you have questions, comments, you know, you could reach out. I believe there was an email, that is my email. So if you do have questions on anything you saw here or FOSS related, you can reach out via that email. And then Erica or Joanna, any closing remarks?
Thank you again.
Well, thank you. And
someone asked a question about evaluation. Does someone on the team know what the NSTA evaluation protocol is?
I believe that there is a something that is handled through NSTA.
I think that happens at the end of the conference. I could be wrong.
They have been sending out surveys through the chat for some of the sessions.
Okay, I think some of those may be more internal ones rather than for NSTA. No, it's I think it varies from session to session. So yeah, I mean, if you have feedback, we'd love some. And thank you for coming.
I found the evaluation on my agenda.
Okay.
So where the Zoom link was, it says evaluate this session.
Right.
Thank you.
So I believe that there is another session coming up in this room. So unless somebody has any final comments, we're going to stop the recording and end the session.
Have a great conference, everyone.
Right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Well done, you guys.
Yeah, really.